And according to John 19, at this very moment of the death, right before he cried out, he said these three words, "It is finished." And he cried out, and his heart bursted in the sorrow. And he died, and he gave up the ghost. In this humble attempt, brethren, I present to you in the preaching of this message the sore amazement of the man of sorrows. The very moments in which Jesus himself spiritually perceived that he was now going to become a sin-burdened sacrifice. He was at these moments, he was going to receive the imputation of all these sins, that at that very moment, he had an infinite and clear perception of all of their evils. Something that would sink David into hell with sorrow was flashing with infinite clarity in the mind of Christ. And in the feeling or sensation of it all, in the feeling and sensation of this dreadful moment where his eternal relationship with God was just altered, and he's experiencing something he's never experienced before, the question is, how did he feel at that moment? What were his passions at that very moment? When he bore the sin of mankind, how did he feel? What is his passion? This is why Jesus was filled with sore amazement as a man of sorrows. It is because of a spiritual perception of coming into the place of a sin-burdened sacrifice, and he perceived that he would then become the target of the wrath of God. It was not the Romans that he feared. It was not the cross. It was the wrath of God towards himself as he became sin on our behalf. 2 Corinthians 5:21. He made him who knew no sin become sin on our behalf, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. So in the Garden of Gethsemane, this fear of Hebrews 5 verse 7, this sore amazement of Mark 14, this sorrow of Isaiah 53 was because Jesus was perceiving the imputation of sin and the wrath of God. And over those next hours leading up to the cross, he would walk through a stormy tempest of divine wrath with omniscient clarity and presence of mind, and feel sorrow that no man has ever felt, because he loves the Father. He loves the Father with an infinite love, with an unwavering devotion, with a sense of cherishing the Father and his relationship with the Father in a love that is beyond comprehension. And for the very first time, he would perceive something that he's never perceived before, the details of which we cannot speak specifically, nor could we know it or fathom it or tell the whole of it. But we can, by grace, understand that Jesus is not an amoral, unconscious beast, and that he knew what was happening to him. He knew it, brethren. He was sore amazed to the point of death, so that he suffered hematidrosis, in the Garden of Gethsemane. Literally, the capillaries in his body began to burst. His blood mixed with his sweat glands, and blood was coming out of his skin as sweat and dropping on the ground. And that literally means he was sorrowful to the point of death. This is a sorrow that is killing him literally. I believe this prayer of salvation, as he was coming into subjection to the will of God, in Hebrews chapter 5, verse 7, this prayer of salvation that he made, it says, who in the days of his flesh, when he offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that's able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared. I believe this is talking about when the Lord Jesus as a man was brought to the brink and passed the threshold of what amount of sorrow a mortal man could endure in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was literally telling the truth that he was exceedingly sorrowful to the point of death. He was aware that he was about to die in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he wasn't going to be able to finish the course unless God miraculously strengthened his mortal body to endure the unspeakable throes of the sorrows that he was under. That he was literally going to die, and he began to weep and pray in subjection to go through the stormy tempest of divine wrath, infinitely understanding the sins of all time. And he says, thy will be done. Strengthen me to finish this course, because he perceived he was about to die in that garden, brethren. And he feared not doing God the Father's will. And God heard his prayer, and it says explicitly in Luke 22 that God sent an angel to strengthen him as he prayed earnestly with tears, suffering hematidrosis, sweating blood, on the brink of death. And he would have died, brethren, if God did not send an angel to strengthen him. He would have died. Jesus was brought to the threshold of sorrow that a mortal man could endure. He would have never prayed to be delivered from the death of the cross. It was for that reason that he came. He was praying to finish the course, because his mortal frame was giving out, brethren. And the sorrow that he was facing up to in the garden continued with him until the cross, until the very moments when he said, it is finished. And he gave out a loud cry, and his heart bursted with sorrow, and he died.